You better go second. No. Call morning. Meeting, minutes from our last meeting. 12:13. Any thoughts, comments, questions? No.
One comment, I thought it was a good meeting.
Okay. Yeah, no, I think Nicole gave a bunch. All right,
I move we accept
okay.
the minutes.
Second, all in favor? Okay. Brian.
Yeah. Okay, so the update from Casella. I've been working with Talia to get that set up.
Is that our new person or your new person?
Well, she offered to help. Because the original person that does the scheduling no longer works here, so
Yeah,
she stepped in. I called for an update and she's on vacation until January 5th or so. But they gave me another contact.
okay.
I met with him or talked to him. He wants me to call the manager directly at the facility and talk to him. So I'll try to do that tomorrow. And I'm still shooting for the 11th of January. If that changes, I'll let you know. So the new compactor, we did a test run on the Thursday prior to Thanksgiving, prior to Christmas. It worked great. I waited a couple hours for another staff member to come in, give her some training on it, went out and fired it up. Nothing.
Yeah. Oh, no.
It was 28 degrees that day, and I believe there's a temperature limit switch on it in the power unit. I've sent an email to the manufacturer to verify that. I haven't heard back yet. What we did is we brought the whole power unit back into the building. We let it heat up to 50 or 55 degrees. We took it back out, plugged it in, thing fired right back up.
Sounds like you need a block heater or something, so.
I have a block heater. I just didn't put it on that day because we were just running through some tests. Tomorrow, with today's rain and hopefully a little bit of rain tomorrow, I have a leak on it. I want to figure out where that leak is before we start using it and get that patched. Somehow water from the inside of it. I don't want water in there because it will freeze to the bottom of it.
Yeah.
So when we get that taken care of, but hopefully by Saturday we'll have this thing up and running. And
Now, we mentioned before we started that I'll come over sometime, maybe. Let's see, Saturday, anyway, I'll find some time. Oh, you're not open on Saturday though, or are you?
we are Saturday.
All right,
No, but Saturday's probably not a good day for it because we're gonna be swamped.
okay. I'll send you a note, figure some time, we'll sit down and I'll try to draft out a quick little article for the thing. Now, are we getting rid of the 2 silver bullets that?
I'm gonna keep one
Yeah,
as a backup in the event something breaks or we lose power or.
okay. Now, do we own those silver bullets? Okay.
They're on loan to us when we pay for them.
Oh, okay.
Oh, we pay for
Oh, shit. Not literally.
Well, that's the truth.
So I don't know if you watched last night's select board meeting.
No,
They approved a 1-year contract for plumber. For the 24-25 season. And that will go into effect in June.
So that'll take him through June of
25 for that.
yeah. So once we get this quarterly report kind of done, we really need to get started on what to do from there. Because the model will change undoubtedly, was a contractor that do a bunch of stuff. You know, you will have to figure out, I mean, right now, and in the ordinance that I drafted, but in our current ordinance, it talks about, you know, it's a usage fee. So in other words, if you don't use it, it doesn't, so we're gonna have to see. If a new person or a new contractor comes in and does something, are they gonna be able to charge on a usage basis, or is that something that is gonna have to be?
Or there is another one.
Yeah, well, there are other ones, but not doing it the model we're doing.
Yeah.
So, or do we bring it in and do it in-house, so.
Real quick, so we're in reaching out to different people for my budget season and that. I reached out to EcoMaine. And they sent me an informal. Dollar figure if we went with them. And on the back of that is a sample ordinance for. Solid waste trash disposal.
What is OCC?
Corrugated cardboard. Old corrugated cardboard.
Now, these are cost per ton, so this is instead of Casella, what Casella does right now.
Casella also does by ton.
Oh, this is recycling stuff, okay.
Right. And then
Oh, it's not the trash yet, so.
on the back, on the bottom is trash. MSW is trash.
Oh, okay.
So your first line, what's up here? The first one is recycling without cardboard in it. Your second line is recycling with cardboard in it,
Mhm.
and then the bottom line is trash. So
Yeah, Casella right now, we're at 112. I think that's what it is, a ton for Casella right now, we
Yeah.
expect they're gonna go up.
yeah, I don't have their figures in front of me.
If I interpret this correctly, trash is cheaper than recycling.
Oh,
It is.
Yeah, exactly.
Always have been, yeah. Always have been.
Oh, no, that makes any sense.
Okay.
It doesn't.
Trying to say it out loud, make sure
Now, refresh my memory, we went over EcoMaine and they will not truck from here.
They do not they don't have a transportation system. We would have to transport it to them.
Using they have silver bullets or whatever they.
We wouldn't have to, I
We
mean,
wouldn't have to.
because now we own our own compactor.
Right.
So when we were looking at EcoMaine, the last committee, there was gonna be around 400 to 450 per trip for transportation down there. Now it would certainly be more than that,
Mhm.
but if we owned our own truck,
That would be a capital investment of the truck for them.
right?
Would that be a roll on truck, type truck? It would.
Yeah,
do they give the roll offs, same deal on loan.
we own it, we have it, it's one we just bought.
Yeah.
If we didn't own one, they give you one to use at no fee.
But as it is right now, they are approximately same price as Casella, and they don't have a transportation program.
Right, they're a little bit cheaper than Casella, yes,
Yes.
and the way they do their figuring is different from Casella. So Casella uses an ACR formula. EcoMaine does not. Theirs is just a set. Which I think is kind of better.
Are they still doing the cost sharing with the towns as far as when
They are, yep, so this is just an informal piece. I told her if the town wanted to pursue it, then we'd do something a little more formal.
Yeah,
But this was basically just laid out for the committee.
this will be something that we'll tackle for July 1, 2025. Effective date. Is that? Yeah, I'm looking at Casella right now, the trash is at 115 a ton. On the trash, and we're anticipating they may go up. And then there's single sort, at $400 a haul. It was $418.
That's just to transport it to Western.
And that's the transport, and then the disposal rate, is it?
It's a
145 plus 35 or 34.50 or whatever. Okay. So that's certainly good stuff for us to keep in mind for as we tackle all of what happens.
Right. And again, with, even if, staying with Casella. If we owned our own vehicle, that would eliminate that $400 a haul.
Mhm. But it would mean we'd have to capitalize and purchase a vehicle,
Right.
so.
It's probably for the best, we actually know that we have a compactor downstairs to print this up in several months, because we'll get a better idea
Yeah.
of how many trips we're
Mhm.
actually doing. So that'll be a great data point to pick up then.
Yeah, I remember Pico Maine came to present to us that time and they. We didn't even consider it because they couldn't come up here to transport, but with the towns that do go to them and. Take all their recycles there, they just like Casella, they sell it. To whatever, whoever's buying number two, whoever's buying this and that, and then there was a cost. Kick back to the
Yeah,
town.
the towns get a check.
Yeah, and we don't get that now, obviously.
Right.
I don't know how big of a check or
Yeah.
I don't know what kind of money they were talking about. That was one of their big selling points.
No, that's great. Thank you, Brian.
And this, Catherine from Eco Maine said that she would come up and if you wanted her to speak to you and answer your questions.
That may be something that would be really helpful. And once we get the ordinance
Right.
pushed behind, then really start digging into the other, that'd probably be very helpful. All right, one other thing I no, we had asked to take a look at what it would take for us to be a transfer station. Have you made any progress on that?
We need a gate. Planning board approval and state licensing.
What do we do to get going on that? And I know we're probably gonna need a cost estimate on what that gate would be, because there's. You know, need that, is there any, when we get the actual licensing? I mean, is there a cost to apply for the license? I mean, I just,
I don't. There was never a fee discussed when I was talking to DEP about it.
okay,
So I don't believe there's a fee.
Was the gate a separate entrance or just a gate?
We have to have a separate entrance.
Gate separate.
We can do that in-house. So the cost for that is minimal.
Still a few loads of ground associated with
Yeah,
that.
you know, a culvert, couple sections of culvert, a gate, because the transfer station must have a locked entrance.
yeah, one of the things we have talked about a couple times now is to really. Get our arms around that. You know, here's what it would cost, here's what the ground would be, here's what all this would be. We're recommending to the select board that we move forward and we get licenses and we do that work in-house. It's gonna be. I don't know, $300, what I'm pulling out of the air, obviously. But is that, can you narrow down and get a little more specific on, you know, I need to make an entrance, put up a gate.
I'll get an entrance.
Yeah, and then, what's the process, if anything, other than just filling out paperwork to become the transfer station? Is anything else that you can think of that? Give me an update from Brian on? And one thing I didn't have down here, anything else? That you wanna add to the agenda that's not there?
So ultimately we'll be there. So there's plenty here.
Oh, I don't know. I do not believe we're gonna be able to get through all of it tonight, so I'm hoping that what we'll be able to do is chunk a little. And then figure, when do we come together next, or how do we approach it, do we? kind to pursue, what are we doing now? So, okay, next thing on is the new ordinance. We talked about setting the date for the public input. We should probably do that more quickly. Set the date and we can work towards it. We talked about doing that at the end of January. Public input session, so I'm not sure.
So some months from today.
Yeah, I was just looking myself. So January 24th, January 31st, those are 2 Wednesdays, if we want to stick with Wednesdays.
Kind of like the idea that 31st give us just a little more wiggle room.
Okay, I kind of like the 24th, because it was getting it done, so I don't know, but.
Yeah, no, that's the idea.
6 of one, half dozen the other, I don't, okay,
Coin
that
perspective.
so what do you think, 24th, 31st?
Not a bad way of looking at it, either, but not so bad.
I think 24th, we'll have something hammered out by then.
Oh, I think so.
Yeah, and get it. We'll be that week ahead. Getting this down the road.
Okay, so we'll need to have that, Brian, publicized on the website. We'll also put some stuff, just announcement wise on social media. Hopefully, we will get people that will come. So we definitely need it. So we set that and set it at the rate of what, 6 o'clock, which would be. Actually, is that even a regular meeting?
That would be a regular meeting, right?
Yeah.
If we're going every 2 months.
Would, yeah. So Brian, can you get that?
No, our meetings for January are gonna be the 10th and 24th.
And we're talking about doing it on the 24th.
Oh, okay. Yeah, regular meeting.
Oh. Um,
And it's 2 weeks notice. For public hearing. I believe it's 1 week actually,
yeah,
but we've got
from
plenty.
what I remember, it's 1 week,
Yeah,
but we can always give more. Now, one thing we're gonna want to do is somehow, and I'm not sure exactly how to do it, we can put it on the town website, have something in people's hands beforehand, so,
that's one of that, yeah. So we need to have a draft by the, try to the 17th to go out with the notice.
absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely, and we can do the notice, I mean, if we're fine on the date, we can do the notice now. I mean, we don't have to just give it 1 week, I'd rather have more people here than not.
Yeah, right.
So, I mean, it can go on the website whenever, and then maybe we'll wait and put it on social media after our next meeting, whenever that is. All right, getting to it. I didn't get this until later, so I wasn't able to incorporate it into the. No, that's fine. Did you guys get the draft / outline that I put together?
Already.
Kind of stuff. So I don't, I'm not, it didn't come out until yesterday afternoon, so if you haven't read it.
I'm going through it.
I get it, but
Skimmed it today. At least I read all the headlines, which is really what I was,
yeah,
more than anything else. I think probably what we're talking about today is what do we want in this thing? Just.
and I don't know that we're gonna even get through all that
Yeah.
today. We did put down. Kind of in my email front, some of the stuff for me to look at. The fact that it's cobbled together from many sources, because I kept going through all the different towns. It's got different voice, I know, because it just got late and I got brain dead after looking at it for so long. That there are places where we're calling, trash rubbish and all that kind of stuff, and that, have to go through that. It also obviously sounds like it's different voice, because it was, a little from here, a little from there. I did some from those research articles.
That's not one, yeah.
Got some notes in areas here that we can go through. definition, like you said in your thing, and, you know, definitions putting to the end, let's figure what we were saying before we define it. And also in my cover note, I talked about the power to make changes. You know, some, like, one of the changes that I put in, and we can get into a little more just broadly, one of the things is, if we're really gonna change the ordinance, in other words, if doing away with the trash program, the way they talked about it, it's gotta go through town meeting. Other changes, you know, if it's changed directed by some change in the underlying legal structure, the change can be automatic. Some things like, you know, what is considered recycle or not, I put down in here that, you know, solid waste director could do that on their own. Some places town manager with input from solid waste director, some places selectmen. So I don't know how consistent we want to be, whether we do want to, you know, some stuff is low hanging fruit. Nobody should be making some of those changes without consulting with Brian anyways, on what, or whoever is in his shoes, you know, maybe he's, you know, whoever that person is should just have the ability to change this or that.
Sounds like pretty much we're saying is, make sure we write this in such a way that it's flexible, so we're not being overly restrictive.
Yep, yep.
Solid waste director. And the select board ability to make changes, change the licensing fees, that shouldn't require an ordinance update. Right, goes to
No.
town,
But the licensing
Yeah.
fee, because it's financial, it go through the select board.
right,
Changing what's recycling. So anyway, that's just some of the overall stuff that I put in here. Now, I don't know, Paul, if you wanna go through some of the stuff, because it looks like you hit different aspects than I did, or whether you want to take a look at some of the stuff that's in here, what's the
What do you
best
say?
way?
you were more thorough. So if we start with yours and then any thoughts that Pat and I had, add to yours, just because. Yours was a lot more comprehensive, I would say.
And one thing I do want to say, I mean, I grabbed a bunch of stuff. I may not have grabbed something that you guys think is really important, so please keep that in mind as well as we're going through. So anyway, out of Sabatis, they had a table of contents. I thought that was a great thing, so, you know, we'll do table of contents. And again, some of the stuff I took Sabatis. Purpose, I mean, we've been talking about doing a recital, which is whereas it's the same thing as purpose. Current ordinance has purpose clauses, so I put it down as purpose. A lot of the things are the same as we have, but just worded differently. Some of the things, you know, health, safety, and general well-being, that's one theme that's gone through all of them, so toss that in. Quality of the environment, conserve natural resources, I think that was something that Paul T had talked about getting in. I put in the age-friendly stuff, which basically is trying, you know, to take that to the next level, is talking about a program that is not so onerous, kind of thing on it. So fiscally responsible, balancing wants and needs and program delivery. So in other words, we don't need a 10,000 foot, $2 million recycle. Or,
I'll tell you what, I'll save you the time, I thought the purpose was fantastic. I mean,
okay, great.
no, I have no issues with it, so.
Authority, that's just, granted, I pulled that out of somebody's, I can't remember which town. I pulled it out, but I pulled it out of somebody's. Applicability, again, I pulled that out of somebody's ordinance as well. Storage, collection, transfer, treatment, use, processing, recycling, disposal. Town of Broadband. Also regulates fees related thereto, enforcement. Definitions we're gonna do later. Authority to establish. Now, this is where I got them talking about, you know, big changes, program changes are, town meeting, but it's, again, a lot of this language I took from other things. I think when we finally get to legal review on some of this, it's gonna be interesting to have, if anyone has a friend that's a lawyer that wants to look at it. Granted authority after duly notice public hearing to establish rules, regulations, so they have the authority to do that. Maybe enacted to implement any aspect. Should be reviewed and to satisfy the needs of the town, change to state and federal laws. and regulations and costs of the town may occur. Board of Selectmen shall establish effective dates. That's 4 rules. I think I said that was just a typo on mine. I think I've changed that for yours. Rules and regulations will be on file, town hall, published on the town's, and I said internet site, other places I called it website. Because none of the ordinances that read, they've all been written so long ago that, website's not a thing. So, I don't know, do we call it internet site? Do we call it website? What do we call it? Because I called it 2 different things.
Figure that might be a detail we can figure out later.
I would think website, but that's just another one.
Okay, it may be amended by vote, so maybe all direct amendments should be proposed by, it's talking about the solid waste committee. I don't know. Oldham had in the old ordinance that there had to be a solid waste committee. I don't know if there needs to be a solid waste committee, as long as we have a solid waste department and director, and it needs some expertise.
I think you need a solid waste committee when the board of selectmen believe that something like this needs to be changed, or need a committee to deal with it.
It does say solid waste committee or solid waste director, so it doesn't mean that you have to have a committee, it's changes can be. Proposed amendments now, and we need to think about how tight that is, because there are other places that talks about amendments too. So I'm just walking through it now. I think this is one of those things we really have to read and get into. There's a typo. Amended without public hearings to meet any changes in state and federal laws. And then it gets into some of the provisions that we are talking about. So that authority, I think, could probably be tightened up, and we want to think about administratively that a little bit, maybe amended during the town meeting. That was only meant to be big changes. For instance, if we come to, 7/125, whatever the model is there, that may be a big enough change that we want to. Of course, if we're going to go before a town meeting, it's going to be effective the next day, or,
The change depends on how specific the ordinance is to begin with, yes.
Yeah, I tried not to get too specific, but it did talk about a collection program. Just said collection, didn't say how it was going to be collected. So if we were to go to, someone that's got that truck that, lifts it up,
Right.
that's still collection. Anyway, dumping, talking about no one can dump.
Right.
Leave an exception in there, so. So you can't have abandoned vehicles, and this may need some editing and language change. Did say that trees, tree limbs, wood waste, lawn waste, that kind of stuff can be on people's property. And I'm not sure that's written in the best narrative.
This was one of the ones that I contended on. I think we touched upon it last meeting as well, because there's a law regarding littering.
Yeah.
So that's a state, there's a statute, Ryan talked about it a couple times.
Yeah.
Previously, and then there's a junkyard provision covered in the land use ordinance. So between the junkyard and the littering law, are we covered with dumping without discussing dumping?
Maybe. My concern about not having it, and others do, I don't remember, we did have something, we had like a sentence in here that talks about. It's just one sentence in the one. If I remember correctly. It just says you can't dump, it was just one sentence. Anyway, one of the problems with that is, if it's not here, do people think about the state law and the next law and that kind of stuff?
We could reference it. Just say. Shouldn't have a junkyard in accordance with the land use zone ordinance, or no littering in accordance with state law. I mean. I'd like to think every adult in town knows you can't litter, you shouldn't litter.
I'm not.
I also have enough faith in the community. That doesn't mean they don't, that they do, rather, or however you want to say it, but
So there are a lot of towns that do have the dumping. And I know Paul's not here at the moment, but he's, I believe, also talked about no person shall dump his cart or otherwise, so. I don't know, I don't think it hurts to have the dumping in there, and then I also put waterways, because. Dumping on land is different than waterways, and where you can have tree stumps and all that stuff on land, do you really want people to dump any of their yard waste in the waterways? And there's probably another state marine law somewhere that talks about that. So you got people in state marine laws, you got them in town land use ordinances, you got them in state littering ordinances. I don't know, I personally thought it didn't hurt any here, and when we get to definitions, we can actually put in references to.
So my thought on this one is, you know, and I saw the same thing in other ordinances.
Yeah.
I can probably only point to the one that you took this from or modified it from, but. If someone burns a stack of paper or cardboard. Or something like that, that was also
Well, that
has an organic
Yes.
component to it.
it's the burning down here as opposed to the dumping.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
sorry, but
No.
so. That's why I was just like, how far do we want to go down this hole when we have other laws that we can ignore? Because it's.
We
I,
have had in town, and I'm thinking, there's that one that was up on Ridge Road. The huge, dumping in cars and all kinds of stuff, and there've been other places in town where people have dumped.
yep,
And they've been, it's the one that you were telling us about, or someone was telling us about, that grew rats and it became a health hazard, and I'm more comfortable with having it outlined there. That said, we could put reference into in accordance with state and whatever laws as well.
Is it spelled out in the town's land use ordinance?
That was 256 pages and I haven't read it.
Mhm.
You're welcome to
I-
read it.
I-
I have a copy of it.
I think we should have a dumping headline like that, but I said I would just simplify it, no owner, occupant, tenant, lease, tenant, or lessee of any property in the town of Nottingham. Shall not dump on any land or waterways in accordance with land use ordinance and state law.
I like that.
I think the problem with just saying it like that. Dumping is subjective, which is why some of this language is a little clearer.
Right, that's why I was wondering, is it spelled out?
I do not know, and. I mean, because dumping could be interpreted, I mean, talk legal, and you've probably worked with a lot of lawyers, I've worked with a lot of lawyers, if you just use the word dumping. Unless you then go into the definitions and then put this in the definitions, that's what dumping means, which kind of is,
But do we need to if we're just referencing a state law because they cover all that stuff? So
Do you know what state laws,
I actually have a few of the references in mine, actually.
let's see, yeah. Covered by junkyard and littering. You got littering and burning down here at certain titles. What happens when those things change?
So, yeah, this is one of the ones where, when we were talking about last time, if we do make a reference. I don't think we want to, you might be able to reference a specific statute. But then you say, or a current version or something like that, because.
Yeah, yeah, there's legal
Like
language that you
30, not to mention the discontinued roads, it was like 3023, and then became 3026, and 3026A. And 3028 references, so yeah, it gets real garbled.
With all of it being that garbled, what's the problem with putting in here that you can't dump?
I think my thing is when it comes to these sorts of laws, who's really going to be enforcing it? If someone litters, who's going to be enforcing it? It's not going to be, I can't imagine the code enforcement officer is gonna,
There is someplace else where the code enforcement officer is mentioned.
Right, and that'd be like in a junkyard and everything, that is more of a CEO thing, goes to the town, and we've seen that, but if someone throws a pack of cigarette butts out the window. The CEO is not gonna do anything about this, that'll be local law enforcement, and local law enforcement is gonna run state law and impose the town ordinance.
Laugh at you
Yeah,
if someone does something like that, because they're gonna laugh at you and regular citizen is just gonna pick that up. That's. I mean, what we're really talking about is dumping in some of the instances that we've had.
I guess maybe more. Cleanly put. If dumping is going to be enforceable by law enforcement. Why would we wanna what is the benefit of putting an ordinance in where law enforcement would not look at when it comes to the authority of. Doing anything about it?
There are a couple of responses to that. One, right now, if somebody dumps something by the side of the road. Brian notifies and then he works with law enforcement, so he does take a piece of that side of the road kind of stuff. The other thing is one of these, one of the, how to write ordinances things. Ordinances are both there for reasons of law, but also there for reasons of communication. And to try to make things clear. And by not communicating clearly. I mean, we just have talked about how complex some of those ordinances and those state laws are, and it goes from one to the other, to the other, to the other. That's not particularly clear. This is pretty clear. And as a communications tool, this is pretty clear. Now, because it's two different things, I mean, law enforcement could look at this. I mean, the sheriff of Saginaw, I don't, when they address a dump on the side of the road that Brian identifies to them. When it comes to like the big junkyard dumps that have been there before, I know code enforcement has been involved and they've worked with law enforcement. The ordinance and all the ordinances talk about being enforced by law enforcement. As well, there's, and then this one does, when it talks about severability enforcement, it does talk about should be enforced solid waste director, health officer, codes enforcement officer, and appropriate law enforcement departments. So this is something like the health and not that our current health officer, who's a great person, a retired nurse, is not going to go out there and say, oh, but she could identify, look at something and then work law enforcement on.
Okay. I still like Pat's modified version personally.
If it's already against the law. Somewhere else, state law. Do we, yeah, I don't, it's redundancy, I guess.
It is.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm not arguing it's redundancy, what I'm saying is for clear communication. Having it all in one place. Is a handy thing to do. Now, we could we could put something in talking about state laws.
Again, I'm just kind of thinking I've never met someone. Whereas if I ask, is it okay to throw trash on the side of the road? I've said, yes, it's okay. I mean, I so that's why I'm saying when it comes to the redundancy, it's just like, I think this is one, and again, my personal opinion, we don't need to spell it out, for communication's sake, because I think every half responsible adult knows that you can't do that. Again, that's just my
Do we
personal
have
thing.
people that throw shit, excuse me, open mic, sorry. Do we have people that throw stuff and trash on the side of the road right now, even though they know it's wrong?
Absolutely, especially Malay Road.
And is the ordinance gonna change?
So I just quickly brought up main statutes and 2263A is littering, and it's a dozen paragraphs and subparagraphs all about not being allowed to dump on public highways, roads, streets, alleys, public right of way.
Yeah,
Freshwater lakes, rivers, streams, tidal, coastal.
Okay, question, and I know you're just looking at how that talks about public. What about private?
it
Because
says,
that's,
there says property, not, yeah, it's covering in private as well.
It also,
I read
yeah,
that.
it also talks about
I read
private,
that
private
section.
property. In or on any private property.
okay. What does it say about yard waste and leaf waste and that kind of stuff?
There's actually a separate statute on that.
I'm sorry,
There was 4 statutes that came up.
I'm sorry, it's something as simple as one paragraph. Versus referring someone, go look online and it's 12 paragraphs over here. And then when you're talking about this other thing, it's another 3 paragraphs over there. I'm not opposed to referencing, state laws, and there are things in here that say, the more restrictive law applies. But as far as communication, and this may not be the right language, I'm still believe that we ought to be clear and communicate, you can't dump. But then-
You just say we can't dump and then say refer to. Whatever you said, we pretty sure, I sure wrote it down.
No owner occupied tenants on any property in the town of Bowden.
Yeah, but then you've got confusion as, okay, I can't dump, but I'm clearing land and I've got trees, can I leave those in? What do we do with Christmas trees? Those are organic, what do we do with this? I mean,
I guess my main problem with this dumping paragraph is it, if you're gonna go into specifics, is it specific enough? Or is it too specific? Does it go beyond the state statute or the land use ordinance? Because if you're gonna be specific, then you basically have to write down every single thing that's in the ordinance about what you can and cannot dump.
I think there's a, I think there's a middle ground on that.
There probably is.
I mean, I'm all for, so what are you saying? Can this rewrite it, just say, please see state laws?
And say when it comes to dumping, no littering in accordance with state laws, and you can't have a junkyard in accordance with land use order. Or ordinance. Or you got it much better, whatever you should have, actually, we're gonna have a recording, so there we go, you have record of it.
This is not stored or disposed of in a manner prescribed.
Cause then we gotta get into like, what's an abandoned vehicle?
Well, that's what, then
So it gets,
the abandoned vehicles are, that's when you get to the definitions. And you define it, and there are many of them in there that define abandoned vehicles, abandoned for more than. Right, and I think actually later on, we talk about abandoned more than 2 years, which was just kind of like,
so part vehicle, that's all that's, like, I just feel getting into that level of detail is. For a rural town,
but we're not getting into the more detail.
well, by
We're just saying abandoned vehicle.
if you keep saying you can't have abandoned vehicles, and there's a lot of abandoned vehicles in town.
There are a lot.
And a lot of them are just parts vehicles. And I don't have one on my property, but I mean, from, the fiscal responsibility perspective, I don't blame someone for wanting one on their property. And it's not. I feel as though that's gonna really upset them.
Well, we've talked about abandoned vehicles before, and if we decide we can take abandoned vehicles out, I mean, we've talked back and forth on it. Some of it is, there are some that have been there for 30 years. I mean, they probably shouldn't be, they probably should be taken care of, but. And there's other, I think, abandoned vehicles, is that?
Anyway, my thought is sticking with the version of what that's up.
Trying to write it out again.
And we can give it a order.
But then I do remember a house on Post Road, you probably drove past, just like,
Yeah, I did.
they had trash bags stacked outside,
Yep.
must have been 100 of them. Should that be against, is that against the law or against the?
Well, it can't be, because it can be a health hazard.
Really? I
I mean,
agree, it should be.
But how do you describe how much is too much though?
That's
That's, once you get to too much, then it becomes a junkyard, so. How do you define what is too much? Is it by cubic feet? How are you gonna measure by cubic feet? Is it by,
I think right now you're going down a rabbit hole that we don't need to go down. Because one of the things that we talk about here is, for instance, code enforcement officer and a health officer. If the health officer is going out and looking at, it, and you've got, only half a dozen bags, but you've got a bunch of rats in there, the health officer is gonna call foul. As well they should. If you've got, just a bunch of leaves and stuff, and then they shouldn't call foul. At some point.
I-
We're not writing federal law, we don't need to be.
My issue is once we start getting naming things, you're potentially leaving a loophole for someone to say, well, it's not in the ordinance that I can't.
That's where we. Also refer to state and federal laws, which are actually referred elsewhere in here too.
Yep.
If there's I think, what's the language say something about it, I mean, we can rewrite. I mean, again, some of this is taken from other places, some of this I've edited to put in, because I started thinking about dumping, what do people, like I said, throw a bunch of, leaves, what do people do with raked leaves nowadays?
compost? Running
It just,
on the
let's
woods?
talk about composting.
Do- Yeah, for wild things.
I'm working that issue. Gotta be a transfer station,
Yeah, that'd be. Right with the composting school.
and then we're gonna take all that.
That's neither. It does say here, any person subject to state and local laws and ordinances may deposit or dump inert fill. So then, because that's one of the other things, you see those signs, clean fill wanted.
Yeah, I don't have any issues with the second part of it, it's really the first half is where, I'm hung up on. Because as that's written, and I know you didn't read it, but I'm reading it, but as I'm thinking about constructing that, it says. Effectively shall not deposit, store, or permit to accumulate any solid waste. Any, by rights, a bag is more than any. So what is that? What is that line in the sand that crosses from any solid waste to a non-permissible amount of solid waste?
Again, I think we're going down a rabbit hole we don't need to go down. Because the only way this is gonna get used and enforced if people, I mean, if you've got something that's gonna be an issue, so. Let's say you've got a neighbor that's got one bag that's out there. I mean, we're not gonna go around looking and saying, oh, you have a bag that's been out there for 3 days. You have to take care of that, that's just not,
But you could.
but. Again, I mean, I don't, you met reasonable people that won't throw trash on the side of the road, but you don't have, but you have, unreasonable people that are gonna talk about one bag and that's awful because we're gonna do it. I think at some point, and again, let's,
That's why I was just thinking, if we just refer to littering and everything on the state statute, that covers it. And then we don't have to get into what crosses the imaginary line of too much more than any solid waste. It just,
so what are we gonna do for communication purposes, because that is important. And if it's just referencing state law, which we can certainly, and it's written in there, we can reference the state law.
the reason I get a little hung up on these little things, and I apologize, is because
No, 'cause I'm hanging in there really, so it's both of us.
is as seen people stand up at town meeting and grab onto a few words. And they hang those hat on a very few words that are taken way out of context. And reading this, I could see how someone could do just that. And I want to make sure we try to avoid that situation.
That's what I was saying when I said potential loophole, so, because someone's gonna say, it doesn't say this. In here. So I can do that, right? Yes. My only issue is, you either gotta spell out everything, which is the entire scheme, or
I think you do.
I think the reference to state ordinance is done, I think.
Yeah, see, and I'm kind of in the middle, and I've seen stuff in the middle that work. That said, we can change this. So deposit, store accumulate solid waste. You know, in accordance with state. And federal, I mean. Because there are federal laws that, you know, EPA laws that deal with that, and I'm not gonna go and research all the state laws, I'm not gonna research all the EPA laws, I haven't even decided to read the 256-page land use ordinance. Which I think is some of the issue, because if we're expecting people to adhere to something. They are not going to go and look at 12 paragraphs in one part of the state law and 3 paragraphs in the other part of the state law, and then the EPA law, and then the 256-page land use ordinance. They need to have something that can say, in general, here's what it is, reference, and I agree with you, reference this for more.
And to that point, I'm not so sure. We're just using the name Don Smith. I apologize for anyone. Don Smith is gonna look at the solid waste ordinance before dumping a bag or throwing a bag of trash out his window either. So.
No, I don't disagree with you, I mean. People who are acting with bad intent, and they may know better, but they don't care, and they're gonna act with bad intent, they're not gonna read any of this stuff anyway.
Yeah.
Bottom line, they're not gonna read the state laws, they're not gonna read the local laws, they're not gonna read anything.
I would be very happy with this if we just took out. From including abandoned vehicles other than tree limbs. Up to wood waste. The rest of it can stay, because then. It's not stored matter prescribed by this ordinance. And. Also somehow work in there, also the town use. The town land use ordinance and state laws, blah, 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 blah. That's the only part that I'm sticking on is specific.
That's the part that I'm leaning on. I can get Link said the second half. I love that second.
I like the first half up until including.
Well, then are we gonna just say then people can leave abandoned vehicles, because there's no place else I believe that's talked about abandoned vehicles, so are we okay with leaving abandoned vehicles?
That's in the land use ordinance on the junkyard.
I guess
No
it's
idea,
not-
56 pages, I haven't read it.
It's up to, because the only reason I know this is there was a gentleman who came across the. Applied for a. Vehicle recycling station, Brian, you might recall, I forget exactly what it is.
Card machine road.
And there was a specific limit on the amount of vehicles someone could have on that property before it turned into that, and that was a state statute sort of thing before you had to get a permit.
Yes.
So there were very specific restrictions on, yeah, you can have one. I want to say the number is like anything after 3, I want to say is what it was, but that's when like there are so many things that come into play here that I'd be more comfortable just, you know. I think kind of what you were saying, Pat, if we're gonna jump in, we gotta jump in, other than that, we gotta just
I 100% don't agree with that.
put people in.
I don't agree with that, because I think that we can. I like your point about referencing all the state stuff that goes down there. We don't need to reiterate that stuff because that means we'd be responsible for doing it. But again, for communication purposes. The only thing, I mean, we can take abandoned cars out and just not deal with them at all. And that was, again, we never came, we talked about it and never came to a decision as a committee as to what to do with them. So if, I mean, what we are maybe doing as a committee is just right now deciding we're not gonna deal with them at all.
Yeah, because we are spending a lot of time on this one, and we're also short a person here, and this is really one of the ones that,
Well,
there are a few people that are, you know, I guess all of us have a fairly strong opinion on. Could we come next time and I'll work with potentially another rephrasing and we could discuss it then? Just because again, I don't want to get hung up on here on this too much.
we're gonna get hung up on all kinds of things, I know.
Actually, on a lot of these, I don't think we're gonna get done, but this was one of the ones that definitely did, flag for me.
One of the things that if you go that way. I was concerned about accumulating any solid waste. And leaving it at that, because then what it does not say, I mean, I'm fine taking abandoned vehicles out if we don't wanna deal with them. But. Does solid waste, and then that comes to our definition of solid waste, then you've got yard waste, you've got trees, you've got. And other ordinances, and we've not done here, I've talked about trees are okay in 4-foot lengths or in this or in that. But what I don't wanna have happen is someone who actually is trying to do the right thing and reading this and going. Oh, man, I can't even put, have a pile of, a burn pile. And then, obviously it gets burned every once in a while. Cause oh no, that's accumulating, and I don't want people to get to being mistaken, which is why I put that specifically in.
Again, I propose that we just kind of, I'm happy to come up with an alternative solution, we'll pick it up when Paul gets here.
Yeah, Paul did talk about putting it in. He put in, those persons shall dump discard or otherwise deposit refuge of any sort in any place other than it, and he used Freeport transfer station. During operating is allowable, may deposit inert substance, and that's where the inert substance came from. Was from doing stuff in accordance with what Paul had listed out. It's at the bottom of section 2860. Yeah, right there. And then I did think it was important to put waterways in too, even though that's covered elsewhere.
I'm okay keeping the waterways because that's clean, it's short, if we have also covered waste. We referenced the other places earlier, it's not getting into. That's pretty sure. It's not, yeah, that one, I don't.
I've read through this 17 times. I would be, if we just took out. Including abandoned vehicles,
Yeah, I've already crossed that. Yeah.
because.
Mhm.
Including, because you're gonna be including a lot of things,
Yeah,
metal piles, this and that.
But I think we also gotta work in those other references as well.
Oh, yeah.
yeah, I agree. Adding references to state, local and federal laws is what I would talk about. State, local and federal, because the EPA's got laws that will apply.
Yeah, DEP generally speaking
Yeah.
is more stringent than the EPA.
Whatever.
What paragraph are you reading?
This is, we are on
6.1.
section 6, general provisions, 6.1 dumping.
Yeah, okay.
Page.
All right, so taking out abandoned vehicles. Do you leave something in there on wood stuff and then adding in reference to. State, federal and local. And I think in your thing, you even put in. State littering. Burning will go later on, but state littering, state. I think there's more than just littering. I would caution against putting in just like littering or the laws that you find, because there could be other state laws that were changed. So I would just say, in accordance with other local, state and federal laws.
Yeah, I'm fine with that, I was kind of using this is my general notes, 'cause I was looking stuff
Yeah.
up, I had another version, but I. Spared you the. It's had a whole bunch of stuff, like I've read a thought. I find an answer to it, I cross it out, I write another thought, I stripped all that stuff out, for that's.
All right, so the way we may not need a rewrite because the way it goes, everything's okay up in solid waste. We're eliminating, including abandoned vehicles. Are we putting in tree limbs, leaves, other wood waste?
That doesn't bother me staying with it.
Okay, manner prescribed by this ordinance, and then we need to put in. State or other local, state and federal laws. Okay,
Yeah, I guess doing it, but yeah,
took us a minute, we got there.
I gotta doing it for a little while, but yes.
Okay, I can, what I'll do is I'll redline what we've done so far
Yep.
and send out waterways, we said we're okay with that.
Carrion,
Carrying. Now, I looked that up from some town that's got it in there.
does this mean pets?
Yeah, the owner of a dead animal, so if you had horses, if you had cows, if you had something, but if you had a wild deer die on your land.
What if it's a cow that you're butchering?
That's what I was thinking about, sometimes.
Well, it's just, show you that. Oh, good catch. This is from some other thing.
Yeah, I know,
Sometimes,
I remember I read it as well.
you know, someone whose horse died, you know, it might be a couple, 3 days before they can get a guy with an excavator over there. To dig a hole and bury it.
Yeah, this was just from somebody else. I mean, we could put a different time frame on, we can do. We just don't want. I mean, this is an awful story. This is New Hampshire. Why not? Their horse died. It was winter time. They left Queenie out in the pile until spring thaw. Not a pretty picture. Many years ago, but I'm not sure that we want Queenie on the pile. No. She was a good horse too. I know another town talked about you cannot put dead things just in the trash. So your cat dies, you can't just put it in the trash and it's like plumber to pick it up. I mean, that was in another one too.
I'm just, I think giving a little more leeway on the time would be good, but the other thing I wanna make sure we figure in is.
Tweety.
The processing of animals.
We don't want Tweety for it.
Yeah,
Yeah, no matter how many times I Googled that, I could not find Tweety four. So I figured it was just
I
a
was
play
looking
on
up on
the
it.
carry on.
Any grammar here, but yeah, I think we might wanna work in something for animal processing as well.
I agree.
I just don't know what that language would look like yet.
And there's another thing, a lot of,
You wanna do 3 days?
there's a lot of hunters, coyote hunters that. Have bait piles, which is basically bones and carcasses, they shoot, and that's not buried. Are you gonna,
Is that, this talks about owner of an animal, so if their big piles are deer, I mean, they didn't own the deer, if their big piles are that stuff.
a lot of times it's cows and horses, sometimes they'll take anything like that to use, I know a lot of.
I mean, we don't have to, I mean, the carrion we picked up from somebody else, we don't have to put it at all. And what we can do is when we're talking about solid waste, stuff that can be thrown out, it's just. There's another one somewhere that's just said, you know, you can't put the dead animal in a trash bag.
I think that's, yeah, we should rephrase, we should do that.
I'm having a reference of the Holy Grail. Monty Python and they go into the car, yeah. Sorry, Jim.
But. Yeah, like, oh, you dead, I'm not dead yet. All right, so can't put dead animal in trash, that's. Now, is there any other? Provision or anything that's gonna keep people from putting Queenie on the pile for the rest of the winter? Do we want it? Do we, I mean, we don't have it right now. Not every town has it. We may not. Need anything other than you can't put Fluffy in your regular trash to be picked up by plumber.
Yeah, what's the difference between a dog and a coyote?
You own one, you don't own the other.
As far as let's just say. Dog died in the backyard, kind of a shot in the backyard. At the end of the day. What's really the difference when it comes from a statute perspective? I mean, they're both organic material, roughly the same
Well, the
size.
statute here is clear, it's the owner.
Right, but I guess from the. The negative impact is effectively the same. You have a. A dead carcass that's the exact same, roughly the same dimensions. Both stink the exact same way.
But we're talking about taking this out and just saying,
Okay,
you
that
can't put it in the trash.
Okay.
Basically, we're change this to say you can't put it in the trash.
So,
Yeah,
And we're just gonna talk about owned animal, well, any caravan can't go in the trash. You can't put the coyote in the trash either.
that works.
But on the other hand, I mean, how are we gonna keep cleaning off the pile? Or do we care enough? Is it a big enough issue to even put it in here? Are there other state laws that may say you can't keep cleaning on the pile?
There are options for disposing of Queenie.
Oh, I know. I've got friends in town that
Yeah.
had the dairy horse.
Well, there's composting in Litchfield for animals.
It's interesting.
There's one in Auburn,
We
for
should,
large animals. Horses.
we should,
Fuck.
when we talk about communication, that's a,
This would be a great resources section for the community. Maybe, I think. This is
Yeah.
exactly where
I
you're
have
going.
no, I have no idea that it's cool.
we're like, okay, so that's just gonna say you can't put it in the trash. Burning.
So I can't burn paper.
Hey, paper is technically wood waste, so there.
Bingo. I like it.
This is just meant to keep you from burning trash piles.
Have you ever watched paper come out of chimney? Nope. It's embers everywhere.
Oh, yeah,
That's what I have. It's why, in theory, I would have a cage over the top of my birthday.
Sure.
Theoretically.
and then I do put in a line about any burning if permitted, because it does talk about trees, tree limbs. Like I said, burn fence. Okay, abandoned vehicles, are we gonna take that out totally, or are we gonna? And I put 2 years in, that's just grabbing at a time frame. If we want it in, time frame is totally whatever you think.
Going back to the burning for a minute, something. Yeah. I'm trying to think of those other things, like paper, you can, use and woodworks, but what about other organic materials? That you might dispose of, are there any?
Now, if I'm cooking out and I burn a steak, does that count? I mean, we're getting too deep into it,
No,
basically, people are gonna understand, you can't. Burn your trash, you can't have a burn barrel.
Right, exactly. You can't have a burn barrel. You can't burn your trash.
Yeah.
Okay. I would,
There is a.
without knowing the law, I would think you can burn organics.
Yeah, and this says any solid waste, and then it does say other than trees, tree limbs, wood waste, which I grabbed that phrase from somebody.
Would be opposed to putting organics in there. I'm not sure about that one, but
I wouldn't be opposed to saying no burning of trash.
Well, it says solid waste, which is the same
I
thing.
mean,
Well, it says any solid waste burning is required to be permitted. You can't get a permit to burn trash, you know, house,
you can,
really?
if, I've actually talked to the, fire department on this. They Like if you run a house as an example, there's more than just one, but if there's a license to purposely run a house, as an example.
Yeah, house is not gonna fit the definition of solid waste, but yeah.
Oh, right, but
Yeah.
I'm just saying
Yeah.
that that's the licensed burn is what that is.
Very, fits.
We're to abandoned vehicles, now we took abandoned vehicles out of the dumping part. Do we wanna do anything on abandoned vehicles? And it does, shall be deposited by a donation or license mechanic within, and I talked about 2 years. We can put in the definition of abandoned vehicles, we can we can exclude parts cars. As you define it. And what this then would hit are on Ridge Road, there are a couple of abandoned vehicles that have been there for 30 years. It hits that stuff. And it can't or we can just take it out totally. Like I said, we have never had abandoned vehicles excluded.
That location actually amazes me because everything else on the property has been cleaned up.
I know the whole
Part of it.
stuff, everything in those, yes, I walk the dogs by that quite often.
I don't mind abandoned vehicles should not be accepted for disposal in a town facility, because we don't have this facility to take care of it anyway.
And then
Yeah.
said vehicles shall be disposed of by, and I put donation in because the ordinance I was picking this up, talking about licensed mechanic or licensed junkyard, but nowadays people can, donate, wherever. Now, again, that 2 years, and we can take out, just put a period after junkyard, and then when we come to defining abandoned vehicles, we can put in if it's been there for more than 2 years or whatever time frame, if it's not used, specifically for parts, that one can be in the definition.
The current thought is stopping after the first period.
Okay, then what that says is that it's okay to leave those cars that are up on the Ridge Road for 30 years, those are okay.
If it's after a certain point, then it's not okay. Because there's a limit to that,
If you landed after the first period, it is
Right,
okay,
but-
look at this.
but there's. Does fall into the other laws of once you have so many vehicles, it's no longer a.
I think that site's got just 2 vehicles or there's 3.
I believe there's an ordinance already in place that says if you have any more than 2 unregistered vehicles, you're in violation of whatever code it is.
Okay, there are at least 2 of them there.
Again, that's 256 pages or something like that.
They're right there.
So,
If you end it after that first period, what you're saying is that's okay. And you said vehicles shall be disposed of via, and then it talks about the rest of them without putting the time frame in it, which is fine.
I'm always looking for loopholes. And I'm thinking, well, I've got a 57 Corvette that, it doesn't run right now, but I'm gonna restore that someday. It's up on,
But what we do is we take care of that, and what's the definition of abandoned vehicle?
what's the definition of abandoned?
Well, we're coming up with all the definitions later, so we come up with a definition of abandoned vehicle. Such that it's a vehicle that's really abandoned, and your 57 Corvette is not gonna be abandoned, you're gonna have that sucker covered and ready to work on.
Yeah, maybe. Or I might have it just,
Yeah. Yeah, it's in this barn. That room for 56, but.
Got a 57 vet, he can make room for it.
that guy.
So again, the question is,
It comes under definitions.
yeah, and that's, and I take that out.
Yeah.
Do we just wanna say vehicles shall be deposited? Do we wanna say what to do with it, or should we just say the town doesn't accept them, you can leave them where they are?
The town doesn't accept them, and we have a ordinance. Land use ordinance that covers junkyards.
But again, you got the two of them that are rusting, that have been there 30 years on Ridge Road.
I'm not upset about two vehicles personally. That's not something, and I think this would be one of those items that's really gonna upset quite a few people in public. It might.
Then take 6.4 out totally then,
Cause you're pushing into property rights. And what else are you gonna?
because as far as it not being accepted in a town facility, when it comes to listing what's accepted and recycled and stuff, which is something that we're not gonna put in here, we can just put right in there, abandoned vehicles not accepted. So 6.4 out.
Try to find that, land use ordinance plan. They originally referenced the vehicle, so I've been looking.
Yeah,
Actually,
just an FYI, we have in my period of working for the town, we have disposed of vehicles.
Have we?
yeah,
What's been the circumstance?
As recent as week and a half ago. We can, yeah.
all right.
What was the circumstances? Was it just like the ones over on Ridge Road? Someone said it's time to get rid of them and you guys took care
Well,
of
this one, gentleman found it on his property and wanted to get rid of it, so it came up in pieces. We disposed of it
it? Wow,
and made money off of it, so.
nice. You make money off those ones on the Ridge Road?
Somebody's gonna want that station wagon.
Oh
So,
my God. Okay, so 6.4 is out. Now, I'm gonna make a suggestion here. I would suggest, I mean, we're only at 6.4. That we call it good at 7:30, but that maybe we get together, either just two of us as a subcommittee, or the 3 or 4 of us that calls, right? Maybe do this instead of going 2 weeks, maybe next week, since we've got a 24th date coming at us. And we can pick up at 6.5. Which is, and one of the notes in there is, I'm not sure exactly what we do with construction waste. So Brian, if you could look at a couple of these things it talks about, I'm not sure exactly what we do currently.
it's bulky waste. It falls under bulky waste.
Okay, but so many treat it separately. Do we treat it separately, or because we don't accept bulky waste right now? Because we're not a transfer station.
We accept it twice a year
Twice a year.
as permitted by DEP.
But if we become a transfer station,
I can accept it daily.
all right, we'll
And
deal with that.
construction waste is nothing more than bulky waste.
Okay, then the next question is, how do you guys wanna keep tackling, because it's 7:20.
I wouldn't mind keep going as much as we can, see, or maybe there's some low hanging fruit we can tackle in 6, just to check some more boxes. Because there's a few that I think we can probably get through in probably 5 minutes or less,
For example.
like compostable materials. I'm not sure if people want to compost, great, at some point, Brian might have a compost thing, but that ties into the flexibility of kind of where we want to leave things, so. When it comes to compostable materials. You can say something, it's encouraged and you kind of leave it there, and then at some point, if Brian has a program or the solid waste type of program.
Okay, you've got somewhat of a program right now.
What we need transfer station, I think, to really do it right.
Now,
Yeah, to do it larger than what we're doing, we.
Yeah.
So,
okay, we are talking about this being effective 7/1, and we're going to be a transfer station before that.
Right. But, so, you get what I'm saying is, we can leave that vague enough where it's just. It's encouraged, and if we have a program, great.
That's not something that we can put in a law.
Oh, right, but I'm
So,
not saying it's exactly.
because
that.
right now,
Except-
he's got, we do composting in that they accept organics and then they give it to a local farmer who feeds it to animals. So there is something right now. Do we expand this when we become a transfer station?
I think we need to.
And then what do we, and I don't disagree with you.
And
then
I-
what do
I
we say
will-
about it?
I say that because by 2040, EPA is going to rule that there will be no organics in landfills.
Yeah,
Is this something that needs to be in the ordinance or just under acceptable materials? At a transfer station?
That's a good point too, yes.
That's, yeah. And then it comes back to, are we using some of this as communication? And which we wanna say, we could say something like compostable materials are. Accepted at the transfer station. In accordance with whatever is, please see the list on our website, not should I say? For further definition.
I think a lot of ways to roll out right into that. It's a lot of ways to probably fall in compostable waste, yeah. Look at that, 3 minutes, we just checked 2 boxes. Sorry.
Right, one of the things I think is we refer so many people back to websites and stuff, and if we do like a resource document communication, and we do have communication. In the future. I don't know if we wanna take a look at whatever the website is and make it a little more easy, because that. The town of Bodenham website's not that, and I know that's a Nicole kind of discussion.
Yeah, there's actually,
Not that friendly.
there's a conversation currently happening about the town website.
Okay,
Um, I don't know where that's leading, but
because it's not 100% friendly right now.
No, but I think whoever mentioned it, Facebook, I'm not sure if it's like people on YouTube, that's. I would say that's been a great communication tool when you close and everything else like that, because I see that more than I would going to the town website.
Are you talking about Facebook friends and family?
No, I'm talking about the solid waste, website.
our Facebook page.
Yeah,
Which can get linked, Facebook.
yes. So, yeah, I see that over the town website over anything else, and
I think most people do that.
yeah. So, that's a compliment to whoever's doing that.
6-9 transfer station.
Okay, wait a minute, we were back at 6.5.
So. yeah,
Are we
jump-
deciding?
I jumped in, so
No, that's okay.
I went. Well, I need to, sorry, you can keep going, we got 6 minutes, if you want to keep going.
Construction waste. Do we want to just say it's considered bulky waste and can be brought to the transfer station?
Yeah, I think that should just fall under
Yeah,
the
acceptable
waste,
materials.
exactly, yeah.
I think that's all. I think that's acceptable material, I think is a moving. What you do this year might not be what you can do next year, and it's. To be determined.
Yeah.
One of the things I would want to say. Is construction waste must be, and we have it elsewhere. But we need to be really clear about it's gotta be from Bodenham. Some towns actually put in order to bring your construction waste, you have to show a valid building permit. I'm not sure we're gonna go that far. But, and we do talk about elsewhere, we could say, but we could say construction waste generated in the town of Bodenham.
I don't think we should be accepting anything from outside of Bodenham.
It says that
Here.
elsewhere here, and we've had issues with people doing some of that.
Yeah, Brian mentioned that,
Yeah.
finding out permits now. So, yeah,
Even with permits, we've had people bring stuff in from their work location that's not in Bodenham. So do we wanna say construction waste generated in Bodenham?
I was just kind of thinking just. I think what you were saying, to come up with an acceptable waste paragraph and just throw that there.
I think one of the things that does. Is it makes it more modeled, because everything's all in this big pile of everything that's acceptable waste, as opposed to. I'm looking at things, I'm looking to try it again as a communication tool, trying to find something really quickly. If we just say construction waste, oh, I can see that goes to the transfer station, okay.
If we leave construction waste in, we leave it simple.
Okay.
Construction waste shall be considered bulky waste and disposed of in that manner and only.
Yeah, I'm just talking about waste
Waste
to be brought to the transfer
in
station.
Bodenham.
Hazardous and biomedical, those are things that are very specific in many. Because there are a lot of laws that generate around it. In accordance with all applicable federal and state regulations unless otherwise approved for disposal, and the only reason I put otherwise approved is, I know. when I went down and saw all those light things, what do you call them again?
The ballast,
Yeah, the light balance, that is definitely hazardous waste, but we do take care of it. So that's why this is worded this way. And that was recommended by solid waste director and approved by board of selectmen. And that's gets to one of those things that I was saying, some of them he recommends and other people approve and, we need to, and maybe we can look at that. At our next meeting.
I think that's one of those ones that also falls under acceptable waste, because I got thinking about this before I bed, and yeah, really, this might be a great place to. Move on, but. There's light bulb ballast, or I'm sorry, just light bulbs in general, well, fluorescents, right? And then there's paint. Paint is technically a hazardous waste as
So we
well,
accept it.
but we accept it, and there's a state program for us to accept
Yeah.
it. And then there's something like a wonderful fire extinguisher balls with
Mercury.
there's another one that's like wicked carcinogenic. I forget exactly what that one is. But then there's methyl, anyway, then there's that extreme. So it's just like hazardous materials is a very wide range of materials, and some may be accepted and some not. And I
That's
think
why
this
it's
is gonna
written the way it
require
is.
Thought.
So what we can. Once we're a transfer station, what we can collect is household hazardous waste. Which is entirely different from, say, an industrial hazardous waste or. Well,
That's why this is written the way it is, which is responsibility of the person generation. God, there are typos all over here. Generating such waste must be disposed of with all applicable federal and state regulations unless otherwise approved for disposal. In Bodin's facility as recommended by and then that gets into who should have the authority to say, yes, we will take that.
Yeah.
It's gotta be recommended by him, but it could be approved by town manager. Make it easier. The sub paragraph to that was one I picked up from somebody because I really liked it. And that is, if there. Any of these incidents in Bodenham and, we have to respond to them. Fire chief is involved in some of those things and that it has to be. Build back that person, so in other words, that's there to make sure that Bodenham is whole. If we ever have to deal with any of these. Pieces.
So we recently had a hazardous spill. On the north end of the Ridge Road. That DEP showed up and DEP actually paid for the cleanup
Perfect.
of that site.
Did they,
It didn't cost the town anything. And. Which kind of surprised us. But apparently that is something that they do quite often. Is pay for those disposal and cleanup of it.
What's still
Diesel. Right into the downstream.
And that's great, and it does talk about main line here. And then it gets to the thing as being maybe amended from time to time, just the thing you were talking about with the. Abandoned roads things, so you gotta have this maybe amended. I don't know when to even talk about it, it just, that gives us the ability if heaven forbid something happens and. We in the fire department, or whatever, are working on it. Somebody's gotta pay it, that's all that says. Tires, are you ready to move on? You look like you're contemplating.
I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking about the unintended consequences of that. Or if there are.
Just because something's written down doesn't mean we have to invoke.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I'm trying to step back and think about things somehow, that's all.
Tires. If we're a transfer station, do we collect them and then do we put it the same as construction waste?
Tires have to be disposed of in an entirely different manner.
Okay.
And I'm kind of on the fence. With it, I wanna make. disposal of items as easy as possible for residents. But every tire store out there takes tires. And, you know, for minimal fee.
I think it's, was it $1 or $2, whatever it is.
So should we just say tires are not accepted, you know? Town doesn't accept tires? I mean, that's fine. I'm just trying to figure what we do so that we can write it down.
Part of me wants to say we will collect tires.
Do you wanna think about it and maybe it, because
Like I said, I wanna make it disposable, everything as easy as possible. And collecting tires is not a problem as long as I got, you know, a space that I can stack them in. That's an item that. At a minimum should be tarped. You don't want them left out. To fill with rainwater and then you have mosquitoes.
mosquitoes.
Right,
Do you wanna think about it some more and we'll just, cause it just says. You know, what's our current process, how do we codify? I would think one thing, if we're gonna do tires, one of the things I would wanna say is, you know, from vehicles that have been registered. In Bowden or even used in Bowden, because, you know, farm equipment that's not always registered. But we do wanna make sure that it's vehicles registered here.
how do you verify that though? I mean, it's,
If I have 4 tires, put them on my truck, I can take them down for a tire. So take them, you know, Christian's well, a couple.
right, you can take them to Lee's, Town Fair, VIP. There's several places you can take them to.
I mean, we can just say, town's not gonna deal with tires. Not part of the acceptable waste.
Do we even say it, or just that's under acceptable waste at this time? Cause.
That can go under acceptable waste. And I don't think acceptable waste should be. Defined to a point that it can't change.
Now, one of the things I think we're gonna talk about in acceptable waste, and I referred to it elsewhere, is that acceptable waste should be a list that's put out on the website. And that's under your control, either with the town manager approval or whatever. So that you've got ultimate. You know, what,
I think I would remove tires from this altogether.
okay. What do you guys think? Same? No, tires. Right.
And I'm fine with the first day, we can make that happen.
Yeah. That does need some wordsmithing,
Yeah,
I think. I'm not sure what it is. You wanna try to take a stab at it?
yeah, I'm not. Sure.
You're 5 minutes beyond your.
I know.
There's one left up.
Yeah.
Goods left roadside.
Yeah.
One of the things I said about this is that. I am. Thinking that it's a good thing to leave that. In, and we can change it and stuff, and then and that way we can get public comment on it. And see what the public wants, and if they wanna don't wanna have that in there, or they wanna have something else in there. I would really like to get some input on that. Other people might not think that it's a big deal and we can take it out. I would love to get some public input on. Whether that's something to put in there.
I think it's a good conversation. And
Um,
I think it's great that people do, if one personal trash, and person's treasure. At some point, if you leave that sofa out on the side of the road for too long, it's no longer.
Yeah.
Sofa.
The only problem I have with that whole. Item is the 2 months.
alright, what's your thought? And that was just, I pulled it out of the air, so any number you pull
I
out,
think 2 months is too long for somebody to leave something at the end of their driveway, Pat.
so you just like.
My mailbox.
Do you wanna say 1 month?
Sure.
Okay. Alright. I will redline. Through 6. Then, now the question is, do you guys wanna meet in a week? So that we can keep on video, because the 24 is looming at us.
I'm okay doing that.
If you wanna meet next Wednesday,
Mhm.
this room is already booked. So we would have to meet across the hall. And we won't be able to broadcast it.
It's a working session. When it goes on.
We can list it as that also.
Yes, listed as a
Not a meeting, just a workshop.
workshop. Now, and this will be the only thing on, there won't be an agenda because this will be the only thing that we'll be dealing with. And like I said, I will redline through 6, so we can look at that real quickly, what the red line is, and then we'll work on the rest of it.
I get a feeling 7 is gonna take a while to get through.
It will.
So. January 3rd,
Yeah, that would, if that's, you know, three-
6 p.m. or.
yeah, does that work for you guys?
It's fine. I'd rather be 6:30, that's okay.
I'm okay with 6:30.
I'm okay with 6:30 if that's. What, Brian, I'm worried about you because you're,
I don't have a life, it don't matter.
oh, man, your daughter just moved back.
6:30.
So what do we decide, 6 or 6:30?
6:30.
Okay.
Cool.
You'll get a chance to.
All right, I move we adjourn. Just get up and walk.
Perfect.
All right, terrific. Thank you. All right, everyone.